Hey everybody, so today I'm going to talk about race swapping, we're going to talk about representation and all that type of jazz. Let's get into it. So like I said, today I'm going to be talking about race swapping and all that type of stuff. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about when I say race swapping, I mean like when there's a character who was originally a certain color and someone changes the color for the sake of the show. Usually they do this to kind of bring attention to people. And sometimes they say that they're doing it so that they can be able to have more representation of a certain race or a certain people. Now, the reason why this was brought up is because if you guys didn't see, there was the Little Mermaid teaser trailer or whatever that came out, and Disney just released it. And we had already known for a while that this new Little Mermaid was going to be black, and people had some problems over that. Because some people are just like, hey, I don't want to see black people. That's racist! Other people are just like, hey, I just want it to look like the original person. And then, of course, people on the other side are just like, it shouldn't matter. It's a fictional character. Other people are like, well, it's for the sake of representation. Some people say, well, hey, it doesn't matter because race wasn't a real big part of her whole story in the first place. So you may be wondering, what do I think? Or you may not care. And I don't care if you don't care because I'm going to tell you anyway. So what I think in this whole scenario is a little bit more complex than sometimes other people talk about. Some people will just talk about it and they just kind of have this one type of view on it. Mine is very complex. So I'm going to start off with this. I do believe that there needs to be more black representation in films, in TV, and everywhere else in every facet of society. I think there needs to be more representation of all different colors and all different races because I think that that is how we have a better society. I think one of the reasons why people are ignorant and why people are racist is because they don't see enough of different colors. And so they see these stereotypes and they believe that that is the only way that people are. That's where like you hear people say this type of nonsense like, oh, you talk white or you act white. And that's because they only know black people for their stereotypes. That's racist! They think that all black people talk a certain way, whatever else. And trust me, I've dealt with that. That is an annoying thing. But one thing I wish as I was growing up was I wish there were more black characters in important roles. Because then people wouldn't just have like people like, okay, like Steve Urkel and think that that's okay. Well, if you're a black person and you don't act hood or whatever, then you're Steve Urkel. I wanted to see more people that were a little bit more neutral. Now, of course, there were characters like that. Like I love the show Static Shock, and it had that black representation in there. He wasn't a hood person or whatever. I mean, he was raised in the hood or whatever, but he wasn't like that. He was very smart. He's very intelligent. He's very well spoken, like a lot of black people are. And so we got to be able to see that there was more beyond the stereotype. And I think that representation helps us to be able to see that. Whether it's Hispanic representation, whether it's Asian representation, whether it's black representation, whatever minority group you look at, you guys can be able to see that. Now, if you guys are white and you guys are looking at this, you guys might think, why in the world do I just talk about minority representation? And the honest truth is, it's because white people, you guys get to have a lot of representation in culture. I don't mean that to be as a bad thing. I'm not saying that like that makes you better or worse or anything like that. I'm just saying that that is the honest facts. You see skater white guys, you see athletic white guys, you see dumb white guys, you see smart white guys. And so it's a lot easier for people to see white people as less of a monolith. And if you don't know what I mean by monolith, I mean like some people think that a monolith is when somebody believes that they're like everyone of a certain culture or a certain type of person or whatever, that they are all thinking the same way, they're all believing the same things. And it's a lot easier for you to understand that white people go in different camps. I mean, we have liberal white people, we have conservative white people, we have Christian white people, we have atheist white people, we have all these different types of like white people, but sometimes people put like black people, Hispanic people, Asian people into one box because we are the minority. You don't see a lot of us, and so it's easy for you to judge the whole population off the few that you see. So that's the kind of importance of representation. So that is my kind of view, at least on that aspect. I do believe that there needs to be more representation out there. Now, what do I think about them changing white characters to black people or changing white characters to some other minority? How do I think about that? My honest thing that I think about it is this. I think that when I am seeing a live action version of something, whether it's a fictional character or whether it's like somebody that's like real or whatever in history or whatever, I kind of expect to see them as they are, or see them as they are easily depicted in the first place. So like I talked about Static Shock earlier, I would be very aggravated if they made a new Static Shock movie and yeah, he was black and yeah, all those things, but if they made him like some type of like thug or something like that, or if even just simply they made him not have dreads. Like, I feel like that's an important part of his whole aesthetic was that he had dreads. And if they didn't, if they had him even having hair like mine, he was a black kid, had hair like mine, I would feel a little bit aggravated because I liked the way that that character was originally. And so that's kind of where I kind of even view like these comic book movies, these cartoons that turn into live action or whatever, like I can kind of understand where people are coming from. If you're a person that liked the original aesthetic of something or liked the original look of something, for it to be completely changed or it to even change slightly, it can make people feel a little bit, Like, I remember the people, they were even aggravated about people that were the same color, but just looked different. I remember people got very mad at how they depicted Lex Luthor in Batman versus Superman. And, I was a little bit like, why did you do that too? And I am not a person who was like super, super into Superman and Batman and stuff like that. I like the Justice League cartoons, and that's about as far as that went. But I still was kind of like, why in the world did you make him this like skinny, non-intimidating, like guy? Like it just felt really weird to make him like that because Lex Luthor was always this big, menacing, bald guy that kind of looked more like a CEO and less like a guy that stands in the back of a room, plays video games, and cries. That was kind of what I kind of saw when I looked at him. And so even though he was the same color, he still didn't look like the original Lex Luthor. And so I can understand where some people will be like, hey, I don't really like you changing it. Now, here is my exception. My exception to the rule is a few things. If you are actually depicting a different character with like similar features. So, for example, like there are multiple versions of Blue Beetle. There is Jaime, which is the one that I actually know and I follow a little bit more, is that Blue Beetle. And so if they make a movie about that Blue Beetle, I expect him to be Puerto Rican. Like that is a very big aspect of his character. But there also is a white Blue Beetle. I actually don't remember his name off the top of my head, but there is a white one. And then it's same with Hal Jordan as the white Green Lantern. And then there's Jon Stewart as the black Green Lantern. So they're both Green Lantern, but they're completely different characters. Or how people have different Ghost Riders, and there's the Ghost Rider that's Hispanic, but there's the Ghost Rider that's white and played by Nicolas Cage. And so that's why I see it as a little bit different. I also see it as different if you are purposely going in and saying that you are doing your own version of something. So, like, where I saw, like, Cinderella with Brandy, like, there was no aggravation in me at all that they made Cinderella a black person because in Cinderella with Brandy, Brandy, it was supposed to be a very different depiction. I mean, they had a white dad, a black mom, and an Asian looking son. Like that was kind of the family there. And then you had Cinderella's family, which is all over the place. And so it wasn't that weird for me because it was supposed to be depicting something different. Now I do have a problem with you saying, hey, this is the same thing. This is the person with the same name. This is supposed to be the same thing, and then completely changing the person. What do I mean by that? Does that mean that I'm not gonna watch The Little Mermaid or whatever? No, I'm probably gonna watch it with my kids because my girls like all that mermaid type of stuff, and like this is a really cool thing for them to be able to see someone that looks like them, and I do think that that's not like a bad thing. I just think that I can understand kind of both sides of it. Now, if your reason for not liking a black person playing this is because you're racist, that's a whole different thing. That's racist! I just have a thing that I am honestly the believer that if you have if you want to have more representation of different cultures, I just think that you need to make really good characters that are of those cultures. I don't think that you need to take white characters or ones that have been historically white and change them. I think you need to make new characters that are just as compelling as these other white characters, but are very different. I don't think that you need to have a black Superman. I don't think that you need to do those types of things like that. Unless, like I said, you are going to make a different character. For example, Miles Morales, Black Spider-Man or whatever. He's half black, half Puerto Rican, but he's a completely different version of Spider-Man. Miles Morales is not Peter Parker. Now, if they would have made Peter Parker and tried to make him black in the like movies and TV shows, that would be a little bit weird because he was always been a white character. I just think that they need to have people of all different cultures represented. And I think that they need to be represented in ways where they're not just like these like easy cash grabs, but like you actually have well written characters. Like don't just make a black character black, just make them black. It was kind of one of the things that I told people that I didn't really like about Outer Banks. Like I loved Outer Banks as a show. It was a pretty decent show, but then it just kind of made me mad that they had this black character in there that felt like he was just shoehorned in because he didn't there were things that he did that wouldn't that just wouldn't happen. Like it just wouldn't happen in black culture. And it seems like sometimes when people write these characters, they write it in a way where they don't actually know the culture really well. If you write an Asian character and then you make them like a part of a very traditional family, but then make them very disrespectful to their elders, like most Asian people are going to be like, whoa, that's not how that's going to work. If you have all of these other cultures that you're trying to do, you just need to make sure that you get it right. And so we want our culture to be represented, but we want it to be represented well. So how do I feel about race swapping? How do I feel about representation? Obviously, I think we need representation. However, I believe that we need to make original characters that are good, that are written well, and that are of different cultures. But I need people that are writing these characters to also know some people of those cultures so they can be able to figure out the nuances of the cultures and not just write some type of stereotype, not just write some type of thing that is like could be put on anybody else, but then you just like put a different name on it, put an Asian name, put a Hispanic name. Like don't do that. Like people of those cultures want to see their cultures being represented well. So yes, culture should be involved in here. I think that there are beautiful people of every culture, whether you're white, Hispanic, black, Asian, whatever. I think that God has created you in a very special way. I believe that you are made in the image of God. I believe that you have purpose, you have meaning, and I don't believe that you should be treated badly because of the color of your skin or anything like that. And I think that the best way that we can be able to get a culture that moves in a better direction when it comes to race and it comes to everything else is if we have more representation, but we have representation in the right way. And that's all I want. And that's what I'm hoping that we can be able to get with this Little Mermaid thing. I'm hoping that we can be able to even get more original Black characters that are just written well.